Sorry. I'm going to call the Board of Administration meeting to order, and the first order of business is roll call.
Priya Mather.
Good morning.
Rob Fechner.
Good morning.
Margaret Brown.
Here.
Steve Juarez for John Chung.
Here.
Richard Costigan.
Here.
Richard Gillihan.
Here.
Dana Hollinger.
Here.
Henry Jones.
Here.
David Miller.
Here.
Ramon Rubalcava.
Here.
Bill Slayton.
Here.
Teresa Taylor.
Here.
Karen Green Ross for Betty Yee.
Here.
Terrific. That brings us to agenda item number 2, which is approval of the August 15th, 2018 Board of Administration timed agenda.
Move approval.
Moved by Mr. Fechner and seconded by Ms. Hollinger. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, and for that I've asked the Vice President, Mr. Fechner.
Please rise. Hand over heart. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Agenda item 4 is the President's report. And good morning, everyone. I wanted to start the day by talking about dessert. Yesterday, CalPERS held our annual ice cream social across the street at CalPERS headquarters. It's a tradition that our board members and executive team look forward to every year, and we get to serve the people who work here at CalPERS, the CalPERS team, by scooping ice cream, and we also get a chance to chat and meet and greet those team members. It's our way of saying thank you to everyone here and in our regional offices for all that you do throughout the year to serve our members, and it's a great joy to participate. So I'd like to thank my fellow board members for their participation in this year's social, and also thank you to the CalPERS team members who put on the event. I think it was a big success this year. Summer still has a way to go, but this is a perfect way to take a break and celebrate the work we do together. And for once, it was not 100 degrees outside, which was a great relief to all, I think. Speaking of meaningful events, I wanted to highlight the CalPERS Benefits Education events, which we know as the CBs. For those who are not familiar, CalPERS hosts a number of CBs throughout the year in various cities throughout the state. They are free and open to all CalPERS members at any stage in their career. And in fact, many of the sessions are targeted to early and mid-career and others to nearing retirement, late career. These events are a great opportunity for members to learn more about their benefits and to attend informative classes to help them plan for their financial future. Last week, we hosted one in La Jolla, and we had a great turnout. In fact, I think we had almost 3 times the number of people pre-registered for this event than we had last year, which is quite something. I was there, and it's so energizing to sit in the sessions to see how the mastery that our team has over their subject matter, and also the gracious way in which they deliver it. That some have a terrific sense of humor, and I really enjoyed the sessions. We also got a chance to hear Marcy speak about the work that we've been doing to strengthen the fund, and I think that session was also very well received by the members who attended. Next week, on August 24th and 25th in Garden Grove, we'll be holding our last CB of 2018. Then, of course, we'll start them right back up again in January. So if you haven't had a chance to attend one yet, I encourage you to go to the one next week in Garden Grove, or again when they start up again in the new year. Another event that we held recently was our July board offsite, and I want to thank everyone for their participation at that offsite last month, and for the excellent presentations from our guest speakers and team members. I got really terrific feedback, not just from the board and the executive team, but also from the members who were in attendance. We had some very open and candid discussions about the issues that we face and how we can strengthen the fund that millions of our members and their families rely on for their retirement and health security. If you had an opportunity to join us, I think you will agree it was time well spent. For future planning, I want to announce the dates of our January offsite. It is scheduled for January 14th through the 16th. We're still working to secure the location, but we'll be sure to let you know when we do so. Also, an early reminder to our valued stakeholders and members of the public that we will not be holding our board or committee meetings in October. That instead, we will be focusing in October on our educational forum in Indian Wells that's taking place October 22nd to the 24th. I know many board members will be in attendance there, and that event is open for registration until October 5th. So hope to see you all there. Finally, on behalf of all of us here on the board, I'd like to say that our deepest thoughts are with the devoted firefighters and first responders fighting the numerous fires throughout the state. We all know that they are fighting the biggest fires in history, and they are putting their lives at risk in order to protect all of us and the rest of California. Your commitment to protecting the safety of others while putting your own safety on the line is truly heroic, and we will never forget it. And we've already seen tremendous devastation and tragedy from these fires, including the truly terrible loss of a brave firefighter just 2 days ago. So we pray for the safe and speedy return home of everyone who is battling these fires. And I just want all of our members to know that we are also, we've been sending our own team members up to Redding and to Mendocino in order to ensure that any of our members who might have lost a home, sadly, or are unable to receive mail, that we want to make sure that they still get their retirement warrants, even if they've had a stoppage in mail. So that's why we're sending our own team up there, and that's why we are here for all of those who are, all of our members in California. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our CEO, Marcy Frost, for her report. Oh, I'm sorry, before I do that, if I may call on Ms. Hollinger for a brief moment.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Let me just recognize you. There you go.
Something very meaningful to me. My son Raleigh is in the audience, and he is near and dear to my heart.
Hi, Raleigh. A charming young man.
That's great.
Ms. Frost.
Yes. Good morning, President Mather and members of the board. It's been a busy summer meeting with members and other stakeholder groups, and in particular, since we last met at our offsite meeting. I'd like to share some of the details of those visits and also discuss a few of the program area priorities taking place across the enterprise. Let me start by mentioning the dedicated teams of firefighters and public safety employees who are battling California's wildfires. They're an example of CalPERS' members who protect and serve the citizens of California, and we are certainly proud to be able to serve them as well. Unfortunately, the fire season is not really a season any longer. It's become a year-round event that has affected all of us here in California, including our members and our retirees who are among those who had to evacuate from their homes, as President Mather indicated. So we are committed to doing what we can to help members maintain some continuity in their lives. A couple of weeks ago, when the fires did hit in Redding, we sent a representative there to meet with some of the CalPERS members who were impacted and helping them with issues such as power of attorney. And in that process, we were able to convert about 40 of the members who had been receiving paper warrants over to automatic deposit. Again, not something we want our members having to worry about in any kind of disruption in their pension benefit. So I would like to thank Donna Lum and the customer service and outreach team for their dedication and their commitment. They do work hard all year long to serve our customers, and this, I think, it was a really good example of what they do. With that in mind, it was a pleasure to recognize them along with the remainder of the CalPERS team at the Ice Cream Social event yesterday. And I would also like to thank the board for their participation in that event. I know our team really enjoys having an opportunity to interact with all of you as well. I'm also hoping that a few of you might be able to join us in West Sacramento. We do have a team out there. Our contact center is out there for at least one more year before they relocate back over to headquarters. So if any of you might be available and be willing to help serve ice cream in West Sacramento, we can get you those details. So moving on now to some important customer outreach efforts. Mr. Miller, you might be joining us.
Love ice cream.
Okay. Several of us have already signed up.
Great. As you know, we have been preparing for the 2018 open enrollment period, which will begin on September 10th, and it will last through October 5th. And I want to encourage all of our covered members to carefully read through this year's materials so that they can learn about any plan updates and changes, because there are some that will help make the best informed decisions. Our members can be confident that the choices before them represent some of the best plan options available, and the team has worked diligently to negotiate the best rates possible. Overall, the increase was held down to the lowest increase in decades. However, participants do need to pay close attention because some plans do have increases as well. So I'm also happy, up on the screen, to share a new mobile experience that we're launching for this year's open enrollment period. This is an opportunity for members to be able to securely access their personal health information anytime, anywhere, through the CalPERS account from their cell phones. You can take, or their iPads, take a look at the screen and you can see how simple it will be to use. Once a member logs in on their phone or tablet, they'll be taken to an overview page to get started. And as you can see, they'll be able to perform several tasks, especially comparing different health plans to see which one might be best for them. Whatever a member can do in their CalPERS account, they can also do in this app. That means retirees will be able to change their health plans if they want to. The app is also designed to be intuitive and user-friendly, and we anticipate that this will be an added convenience for many of our members. Members' health plan statements will be posted at CalPERS at the end of August, and the new premium rates, just a reminder, the new premium rates and any plan changes that members make would be effective on January 1st of 2019. Moving on now to some internal news. You all received a copy of our press release and the press release that went out from the organization, letting you know that Michelle Nix had been hired as our controller. Michelle has nearly 30 years of experience in her field and has a proven track record of leadership as well. She comes to us from the state of Missouri, where she served as CFO and assistant CFO to the state's retirement system, also known as Mosers. And for some of you, I think you've interacted with Gary Finlay in the past, who was the past executive director for that system. She also most recently served as the director of finance for the city of Columbia and had that post since 2016. And Michelle will begin her new position here at CalPERS on September 12th. I'd also like to take an opportunity to thank Taylor Urban for his role as the interim controller. We very much appreciate his willingness to step in and maintain continuity of service during the transition. So now I'd like to mention some of the reports that are important to our work. The first are the annual actuarial valuation reports that set employer and PEPRA member contribution rates for our public agency employers. These reports have been uploaded and can be found in employers' CalPERS accounts and will be posted on our website by the end of September. I'd like to also thank Scott Tarando and the team of actuaries in the actuarial office for all of their hard work in completing the reports with the timeliness and the quality our employers rely upon. And I want to encourage our employers to reach out to their actuary for any assistance that they might need in understanding their new valuation reports. We've also just updated the Solid Foundation for the Future report, and I know many of you are using that as you're out interacting with members or employers, and that update includes the fiscal year 2017-18 returns, investment returns of 8.6. And for those watching or members in the audience, that report has also been updated on our website. Looking externally, I want to share some of the details about recent speaking engagements with stakeholder groups and members. In July, I was invited and had an opportunity to meet with about 2,000 members of the California School Employees Association during their annual delegate conference. Thank you, Mr. Fechner. I shared the decisions CalPERS has been making to strengthen the system so that they can be confident that their benefits will be there when they need them. It was an impressive assembly of CSEA members that took up the entire bottom floor of the Sacramento Convention Center, and I, again, thank them very much for the opportunity to speak with them. Last week, I was like, that was only a week ago. Last week, I had the honor to open the National Association of State Retirement Administrators Conference in San Diego and welcome attendees to California. It was good to talk with many of the other pension leaders around the United States and hear about their successes as well as how they're tackling some of the challenges, some unique to them, some not as unique, and many have common issues around the state. I also had the chance to participate on a panel around organizational risk management. And then tomorrow, I was invited to address the local society of the Chartered Financial Analysts Institute at their biannual member meeting here in Sacramento. And President Mather did mention the CBs, and it is a great opportunity for those of you who have done so. I know Mr. Rubalcava was also there this last weekend, in San Diego. It is a great opportunity to interact with members, and I think what you'll hear, and when we did these Q&A sessions, what we're hearing, the number one questions coming from our members is my service credit secure? Is my benefit secure? And I know you're likely to get those same kinds of questions, but we did it on the second day as well, and that was the first question asked. So again, more opportunities as you're out and about talking with members to really address that question head on and provide a little bit more confidence to some of the members who are really frightened by some of the things they're reading in the paper. We did try something new this time, which stretched my comfort zone a little bit, but we did Facebook Live for the session that I did in San Diego, or in La Jolla, and we're going to try that again in Garden Grove and try to continue that effort into 2019. And in particular, anytime we have updated information that we want to share out with the members, this would be another channel of which we might get better outreach. And so the next couple of weeks, again, August 24th and 25th, we'll hold our last CB, and that's in Garden Grove. And then we'll kick off in January of 2019 in Seaside, which is near Monterey. And then also on the subject of outreach, let me also remind you about our 19th annual educational forum that will take place on October 22nd through the 24th in Indian Wells. This is an annual event that brings our employer partners together with our teams to discuss our common mission. And this year we added a new elected official track, and that was in response to some feedback that Controller Yee had. And so we will have an opportunity, it's about a 2.5 to 3 hour session of where employers can invite one of their elected officials to attend that track. And we have about 790 confirmed registrations right now, which is a little bit above where we were last year. So it seems like this will be another popular event with the employers. And then finally, next month, we'll have our annual all-employee meeting, which we call CalPERS Live. And looking forward again to talking about our accomplishments as well as highlighting our priorities moving forward. And then I'm going to end with investment performance year to date as of June 30th. So the preliminary fiscal year return for 2017-2018, as we've indicated, is 8.6. The 3-year return is 6.7. The 5-year return is 8.1. And the 10-year return is 5.6. And that does conclude my remarks, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Frost. I don't see any questions, so that's going to bring us on to agenda item number 6, which is the action consent items, approval of the June 20th, 2018 and July 16th, 2018 Board of Administration meeting minutes. Moved by Mr. Jones, seconded by Ms. Taylor. Any discussion on the motion? Oh, sorry, I should also note that it also includes, I was looking only at one page, it also includes board travel approvals. And any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. I've had no request to pull anything off of consent, so that brings us to the committee reports and actions. And I will first call on the Chair of the Investment Committee, Henry Jones.
Thank you, Madam President. The Investment Committee met on August 13, 2018. The committee approved Agenda Item 6A to adopt a second reading of the revised private equity program policy. The committee received reports on the following topics: the board investment consultant request for proposal, the Iran-Sudan update, CalPERS trust level review and consultant report, annual program and consultant review of trust level portfolio management and opportunistic strategies, and review of the survey results of the board investment consultants. The chair directed staff to bring back follow-up items at a future date. A discussion of the role of consultants and timing of the request for proposal process no later than the board offsite in January 2019. To provide information on attribution regarding the past 2 years of employment gains for women versus men, and the calculation method for population figures in the economic presentation with respect to non-legal immigrants. Bring back information on the potential impact of Proposition 10 on our apartment portfolio. A discussion of approaches to assess risk posed by climate change in our real estate portfolio. Additional information on the exit in the private equity portfolio between existing portfolio managers. The committee heard public comment on the support for staff's work on engagement with public-private partnerships in detention centers. At this time, I would like to share some highlights of what to expect at the September Investment Committee meeting. The California Public Divest from Iran Act and Sudan Act adoption of findings. The Global Equity and Global Fixed Income Annual Program Reviews and Consultant Reports. The first reading of the revision of the public asset class policies. The CalPERS Consultant Public Fund Universe Comparison Report. And Corporate Governance Update, Proxy Voting, Shareholder Campaigns, and Corporate Engagement. The next meeting of the Investment Committee is scheduled for September 24, 2018 in Sacramento, California. And that concludes my report, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. We did not have a Pension and Health Benefits Committee meeting this month, nor a Finance Administration Committee meeting, so I will call next on Bill Slayton, the Chair of the Performance, Compensation, and Talent Management Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. The committee met on August 14th. The committee recommends and I move the board approve the following. Agenda item 6A, 2018-19 incentive metric recommendations. For the stakeholder engagement incentive metric, approve option A to retain existing survey questions and align scores with KPI average aspirations.
On motion by committee, on the motion, Ms. Hollinger.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. On the motion, and all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Please note Ms. Brown's no.
The committee recommends and I move the board approve the following. For the enterprise operational effectiveness incentive metric, approve option A to exclude board and third-party costs.
On motion by committee, any discussion by on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
On agenda item 6B, 2018-19 incentive plan for the chief executive officer, the committee recommends and I move the board approve the following. Approve option A to retain the current incentive plan structure for the CEO.
On motion by committee, any discussion by the board? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
The committee heard public comment on the following topics: the fiscal year 2018-19 incentive metrics and CEO incentive plan from J.J. Jelinczyk and Al Darby. At this time, I'd like to share some highlights of what to expect at the September Performance, Compensation, and Talent Management Committee meeting. The committee will conduct the annual performance review of the CEO and receive a summary of appraisal outcomes for all other positions covered by the board's compensation policy for executive and investment management positions. The next meeting of the Performance, Compensation, and Talent Management Committee is scheduled for September 25th, 2018 in Sacramento, California, and that completes my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Slayton. Next, we come to the, we did not have a Risk and Audit Committee meeting this month, but we did have a Board Governance Committee, and for that, I'll call on the Vice Chair of that committee, Ms. Hollinger.
Thank you. The committee discussed agenda item 6A. Well, the Board Governance Committee met on August 14th, 2018. The committee discussed agenda item 6A, the process for handling harassment allegations against board members. The committee considered and discussed whether to approve the draft policy for handling harassment allegations against board members. The chair directed staff to rework and modify policy language to address concerns that were raised during the meeting and bring back the revised draft policy to September's Board of Administration meeting. The committee heard public comment on the following topics: the process for handling harassment allegations against board members. At this time, I would like to share some of the highlights of what to expect at the December 2018 meeting. The committee will receive information on the CalPERS Board Education Attendance Report and proposed subsequent year program proposal. The next meeting of the Board Governance Committee is scheduled for December 18th, 2018 in Sacramento, California.
Thank you, Ms. Hollinger. On this item, Mr. Slayton.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to make a comment that our request to discuss and come forward with a policy on harassment is a tough issue. It's a difficult issue to do, and it, obviously one dealing with us as a group also makes it especially difficult to do. We ask our chief counsel to come forward with a policy. We came out of the Board of Regents, who has addressed this issue and had a policy, but it needed to be adopted or adapted for our use. And we ask our council to do that, and I just want to compliment the work that our chief counsel did on this project and the continuing work to bring forth a policy. It's good work, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton. Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There were so many questions with regard to the harassment or misconduct policy that I really think, and there were so many issues raised, it seems to be very tricky, according to the lawyers, and also CalHR was talking to us about the issues involved, that I really think it needs to come back to board governance for further discussion, and I would like to make an amendment to the motion that we actually bring it back to board governance, not bring it back to the full board. Thank you.
So just to be clear, there wasn't a motion made, so you making
Can I
a
make
motion?
a motion? I'd like to make a motion. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Brown, seconded by Miller. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Miller, would you like to speak on the motion? Yeah. Sorry, please, go ahead.
I think, in the discussion we had the other day, there was quite a few issues came up. I think it was a really good discussion. I think it was good work by staff. It spurred a lot of further discussion. I think there's a lot more to really hash out, and I wouldn't want to push Matt and staff to try to rush to address all that stuff and bring something back to the whole board. I think this really belongs in governance committee, and I think we should take the time to get it right and address all the issues that have come up and some that may continue to come up as we go forward with this the development of staff's work and everything.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I'm not so sure, but one of the rationale for trying to bring it back next month is that there's no governance committee until December. Mm-hmm. However, I also concur that the issues are broad enough to require more time to discuss that, and so I would also support bringing it back at a future governance committee.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor.
Yes, thank you. I think based on what we were talking about yesterday and what Mr. Jacobs had told us, I'm not for bringing it back in governance. I think that most of the fixes we discussed were simple language fixes, and I don't know that it needs to be rediscussed in the governance committee. It was everything we all agreed to. And I hesitate to take such an important issue and put it off farther. The issue has, we've had issues before in the past on this, and we have never had a policy. It is time in this environment that we have a policy set. I'm not saying let's not get it right. I definitely think we should get it right. If at the board meeting next month we can have a discussion about it and we feel that it's not ready, we can push it off till the board governance meeting, but I don't see the harm in bringing it to the board meeting for review. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Mr. Slayton.
Thank you, Madam President. As I've said before, this is not an easy topic to talk about or to figure out how to navigate to get a right solution. But it does apply to the full board. And while we do have a governance committee to go through and kind of wrestle with issues and kind of serve them up, we already see that this is a full issue. It's an issue that involves all 13 of us to make a decision. And I think this rises to the level that 13 of us should be able to debate it and all be on an equal footing in terms of voting. And of course, at the governance committee, it's, I'm not on the governance committee, so I don't get a vote on that, although I do, obviously, when it comes to the full board. So all of us are interested in this topic. We all have passions about this and how we feel about it. So why not just call it the way it is and have it at the board meeting? If it's not ready for next month, maybe it's ready for November. If it's not ready for October, if it's not, if we can't do it, obviously we can't do it in October, but if it's not ready in September, then it would be November. But let's keep it on the agenda here. So I would vote against the motion.
Thank you. Mr. Juarez.
Yes, and with all due respect to Mr. Slayton, I think there are a lot of issues that affect the full board that are only initially heard and discussed by committees. And if you start to cut and slice those that you want to have the full board here that are appropriately in the domain of a committee, I think it's going to be Pandora's box. You're going to open it up, and I or somebody else will say, well, wait a minute, we did that on that issue. Why can't we do it on this issue? So I heartily endorse the proposed motion and just say that I think we pretty much did have a full board discussion, even though there are a limited number of members on that board. The full committee was engaged with other board members who weren't on the committee, and so I think that opportunity was in fact entertained. But I would again heartily endorse the motion to have the full governance committee here.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton.
So I would support the motion in the following situation, that, you know, our schedules are somewhat flexible. So just because we're not scheduled right now to have governance until December, we could have governance in September, we could have governance in November. So if the chair is willing to call for a governance committee when staff is ready, rather than artificially wait till December, then I would be in favor of them. I'm okay with the motion.
I will work with the team to see if we can schedule a governance committee meeting for September or November, depending on how quickly we can pull the revised draft together. Mr. Jones.
Well, Madam President, so are you directing staff to bring it back to governance committee, so therefore it would not be necessary for a motion?
I'm looking at Ms. Frost. I don't know if you want to weigh in, but
yeah, let me look at the schedule and what we currently have teed up for the agenda. The remainder of the agenda is because we bring in FAC, pension and health comes back in. It makes for a really long Tuesday. But let me look at the investment committee. Is there a way that we could add a committee meeting on Monday afternoon if the investment committee agenda isn't as full? But let me have some time to look at that, and whether that would be September or November, it would be earlier than the December meeting.
Or potentially we could do it on Wednesday morning before the full board.
Correct.
That might be another option.
Let me look at it.
Okay. All right. So I think we will just decide to bring it to the governance committee. I think there's no need for a vote. And we will work to get it on the September agenda. If not, then the November agenda. We do have a member of the public who wishes to speak on this item. Ms. Snodgrass.
Good morning, Board, Madam President. Donna Snodgrass, Retired Public Employees Association. And I was going to ask the Board to send this back to committee rather than the full Board, so I really appreciate the motion. I was surprised. But I wanted to point out something that dawned on me last night when you're thinking about writing the policy. Yesterday, the discussion on this item surrounded mostly around sexual harassment, because I think that's where all of our brains jumped to when we heard that. But it's written as simply harassment in general. That's a much broader definition. So I don't know if you wanted sexual harassment particularly. Now I'm really confused about what the policy is even being written for, because harassment could be reviewed as like I'm telling Henry, I don't like your tie today, go take it off. You know, it's so subjective. So I just maybe narrow the definition down a little bit. You all pretty much said everything I wanted to say anyway, so thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I think it is intended to be broader than just sexual harassment. It's harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. Okay, so that brings us then to agenda item number 9, the action agenda items, proposed decisions of administrative law judges. And for that, I'll call on the Vice President, Mr. Fechner.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the board adopt the proposed decisions of agenda items 9.2 and 3 and 5 through 20 as the board's own decisions with the minor modifications argued by staff to agenda items 7 and 8, 13, 17 through 20.
Do we need to restate that? That's okay. Motion made by Mr. Fechner, seconded by Ms. Taylor. On the motion, Mr. Gillihan.
Thank you, Madam President. Is our independent counsel on the phone?
He is on the phone.
I'd like to ask Mr. Shaw a question.
Yes, Mr. Shaw, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good morning,
Okay.
Mr. Gillihan.
You have a question
Madam
from Mr. Gillihan.
Good morning, Mr. Shaw. My question has to do with agenda item 9A9, the case of Elias.
Yeah.
And so in your summary, you mention member's own health issues along with son's life-altering accident, which left him in grave condition, could be sufficient grounds for excusable neglect under section 20160. I was just wondering if you could expand on that a little bit and your thoughts on whether this would be something that the board might want to consider to hold for a full board hearing.
Yeah, well, the facts of the case suggested that there were some unique issues that were that the member was impacted by, and the 20160 determination of whether there's excusable neglect or a mistake is a very fact-specific determination. So depending on what the administrative record actually showed, one can see how something like this could constitute grounds for excusable neglect. The board obviously has the option of remanding the case for taking additional evidence on the question of excusable neglect or scheduling it for a full board hearing. So those are the two choices that the board has.
Thank you. So, Madam President, I would move that the board take item 9A9 for full board hearing.
Second.
So I think we need to wait. Maybe we need to take it out of the original motion, and then you can make that motion after we voted on the original motion.
Okay. So
is that okay? So I'll call back. I'll call on you.
I withdraw my motion.
Okay, thank you. But you're asking to remove 9A9 from the original motion made by
Correct.
Mr. Fechner.
Thank
you. And we'll come back to you. Mr. Slayton.
Oh, same thing.
Okay.
Same.
Okay. Okay, so any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Now, Mr. Gillihan.
Thank you, Madam President. So I would move that agenda item 9A9 be scheduled for a full board hearing.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Gillihan, seconded by Costigan. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing, yes, Mr. Gillihan.
I was trying to set up.
Oh, you were turning yourself off. Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Fechner.
Thank you. I move that the board move to remand agenda item 9A1 as argued by staff.
On motion by is there a second to the motion? Second. Motion made by Fechner, seconded by Taylor. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
I move to remand the board. I move that the board votes to remand agenda item 9A4 for the taking of additional evidence in light of the current language of subsection A of section 21252 of the Pearl.
Motion made by Fechner, seconded by Brown. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. That brings us to agenda item 9B. Mr. Fechner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the board deny the petition for reconsideration at agenda item 9B1.
Motion made by Fechner, seconded by Jones. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. That 9C, we had the full board hearing yesterday, so we're not taking that up again today. That brings us to the information agenda items. Number 10A is state and federal legislation update. Mr. Pacheco.
Good morning, Madam President and members of the board. Brad Pacheco, CalPERS team. I wanted to start by updating you on the leadership of our Legislative Affairs Division. Pleased to inform you that we have hired a new chief to lead the division. It's a name and a face that's familiar to CalPERS. Danny Brown will be joining us as Chief of Legislative Affairs in mid-September. Danny's been serving as the Deputy of Legislative Affairs at CalHR under Mr. Gillihan, but prior to that, he had a 17-year career here at CalPERS as our former chief and also held positions within our actuarial office. He's very well versed in retirement law and our benefit programs and has good working relationships with our stakeholders, so we believe that he'll represent CalPERS well in the Capitol. So I do want to thank Scott Blackledge and Gretchen Ziegler, our assistant chiefs, and the entire legislative affairs team for all their work during this season and the help during the transition. As you know, the legislative session is winding down and will conclude on the 31st of the month. There's still several bills affecting CalPERS that are awaiting action, so I want to cover those. The first, let me talk about our sponsored bills. Assembly Bill 2196, authored by Assemblymember Cooper. That would end installment payments into retirement for future service credit purchases, and that is currently on the governor's desk awaiting his signature. Senate Bill 1022 by Senator Pan, that shortens our contracting agency termination process. It's currently awaiting a final vote on the Assembly floor consent calendar, and then it would be heading to the governor's desk. And then finally, Assembly Bill 2415, authored by Assemblyman Calderon, that would provide this board salary setting authority over Chief Health Director and Chief Operating Officer. That is awaiting action by the Senate Appropriations Committee tomorrow to move off the suspense file and head to the Senate floor. There are other bills that we've been tracking that are on the Fiscal Committee's suspense files and subject to action tomorrow, and I'll mention a few of those. Assembly Bill 1597, authored by Assemblymember Nazarian. This would require CalPERS and CalSTRS to divest from any investment vehicle that is issued, owned, or controlled or managed by the government of Turkey upon the passage of federal law imposing sanctions on the government or failure to acknowledge the Armenian genocide. We've met with Assemblymember Nazarian on a number of occasions. He understands our opposition to this bill, but he also understands our willingness to engage companies to try to accomplish some of his goals. And then we also have Assembly Bill 1912 by Assemblymember Rodriguez. This would require member agencies of a JPA to be responsible for retirement liabilities when it ceases operation or terminates its retirement contract. Consistent with this board's support if amended position, the team has engaged the author and other stakeholders on a number of amendments to address our major concerns, and we expect the amendments to appear in print if the bill moves on to the Senate floor. Then I want to mention Senate Bill 1413 by Senator Nielsen. This would create the California Employers Pension Pre-Funding Trust Program, the 115 Trust that we've talked to you about under the board's authority. It does contain a general fund appropriations of approximately $700,000 to cover CalPERS startup costs. This has generated the Department of Finance to file an opposition letter in response to this bill due to the costs. So we are working with our stakeholders to ensure that everyone understands the value of this 115 trust and how important it would be for our employers if it was established. And then lastly, I do want to mention one final bill, and that's Senate Bill 1124. This is authored by CAL FIRE and, or sponsored, excuse me, by CAL FIRE and authored by Senator Leyva. We spoke to you about this bill at our July offsite. So among other things, it would require that a former employer of a retiree whose monthly benefit is reduced because we, through an audit or other means, found that a portion of their compensation was not PERSable, the employer would be responsible for any benefit overpayment the member would normally have to pay, and also be responsible for any future payments outside the system. So when we spoke to you about this at the offsite, we had been working with the sponsor to ensure that CalPERS' role in this would only be to pay the reduced benefit going forward on only compensation that was PERSable by law. Those amendments were made. We were carved out of that role or that process, and we asked this board not to take a position at our July offsite. Shortly after, amendments were made to this bill to make it retroactive back to January 1st, 2013. So just let me explain why this is problematic. If it was retroactive, that would mean that we would have to open up all cases within a 6-year period that have already been determined, where a member has already paid us the overpayment, reverse those, provide the employer with the actuarial equivalent, ask the employer to pay that, and then we would pay the reduced pension going forward. We, based in Renee Ostrander, who is sitting in our audience, can correct me if I'm wrong, but we have about 300 of these cases per year, so that would be 300 times 6 years. We identified a cost of approximately $4 million to do this, plus an annual ongoing cost of $75,000 to provide the actuarial equivalent to the employer. Since then, the sponsor has come back to us and made a compromise to look at a January 2017 retroactive date. So if this went into effect in 2019, it would be only 2 years, and to limit it to cases that were only active or under appeal. There's still work to be involved. To give you an understanding, if we have 300 cases a year, there are probably about 150 of those, or half of them, that get appealed. So that would be 2 years, roughly at 150, that's about 300 cases. I don't have a number or a dollar amount necessarily. We did work with the sponsor to provide some potential amendments on how the language would look to make it retroactive for only 2 years and for only active or appealed cases. And that's actually a bill that's being heard in appropriations this morning. So I wanted to provide the board that update so they understand that there could be a cost and a workload to the system, even if the amendments are accepted. Right now, it is currently still the retroactive date of a 6-year period. And then before I take questions, just want to mention on the federal front, as anticipated, the Public Employee Pension Transparency Act, HR 6290, has been formally introduced. This bill would require state and local government pension plans to report their unfunded liabilities to the U.S. Treasury Department using risk-free rates on U.S. Treasuries. The information would be available to the public via searchable website, and failure to comply with the disclosure requirements would result in plan sponsors' loss of the ability to issue federally tax-exempt bonds. In response, a number of national stakeholder groups such as NASRA, CalPERS, NCTR strongly recommend that pension systems weigh in with their congressional delegations. We have done so on July 24th. We sent a letter of concern to members of the California delegation. So we'll continue to monitor this along with our federal lobbyists as it makes its way. With that, Madam President, I'll stop there and see if there's any questions.
Thank you. We do have several. I just first want to welcome Danny back to the fold. It's nice to have him coming back. Mr. Juarez.
Yeah, just a question about a bill that I think we're opposed to, but I want to confirm that and get the status report. It had to do with establishing a separate unit within the University of California relative to reviewing divestment proposals, and curious where that's at, and if in fact we do indeed have an oppose.
Yes, Mr. Juarez, that was Senate Bill 783. I'm sorry, I may have overlooked that, by Senator Pan, and it creates the divestment review program within the UC system, appropriates $2 million from the general fund to support the program. The board did take an opposed position at the July offsite, and I believe that that's in appropriations right now, and I think that is being heard either today or tomorrow.
Okay, thank you for that. And can you comment, and if not, I totally understand, what's driving Danny Brown back to, could it have been his former employer that caused him to want to come back to the loving arms of CalPERS? No comment.
No comment on that.
Rhetorical question.
Right.
Mr. Gillihan, on that note.
Couldn't have timed that better. Thank you, Madam President. With regard to Senator Leiva's bill, I thought in your presentation, I heard you say that CAL FIRE was the sponsor. You're not referring to, did I mishear that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. California Professional Firefighters.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Ms. Greenross.
Yeah, I had a question on the CAL FIRE bill on the retroactive. I had always understood that laws couldn't be enacted retroactively. Could you speak to that? Because we talked about that on the JPA liability bill.
Yeah. Matt? This is Senator Leiva's bill that would, if we found disallowed compensation through an audit, this bill would allow that going forward, but then retroactive 5 years under its current writing.
Yeah,
I think
mean, the question as to whether it can be retroactive. The retroactivity limitation, it's hard to speak in generalities here, but the retroactivity limitation generally pertains to taking something away from somebody after the fact, or some kind of criminal sanction after the fact. But there are laws that are applied retroactively all the time. I'm happy to discuss it more with you offline, but there's a whole body of law about retroactivity and where it can, when it can be utilized and when it can't.
Just because of the cost, I can see correcting things when you find errors and going forward and correcting them, but the cost of applying things like that retroactively.
Well, I mean, that would suggest significant opposition from those who might be paying the cost. But as far as the legality of it, that's not an issue if the folks vote to, if the legislators vote to put it into place.
So in our JPA bill that we're working on, did we try to also impose liability in prior agreements
Yes.
with the JPAs?
Yes.
And is that still in that proposal?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Back how many years?
Forever.
For any existing JPAs that are in the system.
Okay. Wasn't aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no further requests from the board, but we do have one member of the public who wishes to speak on this item. Mr. Darby, if you could please come up and take a seat. Identify yourself and your affiliation for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes which to speak.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Al Darby, President, Retired Public Employees Association. I didn't hear any mention of something called SB 1032 or AB 1032. I don't know if these are active bills at all or if they will ever see the light of day. They came from Senator Morlock, apparently. If they are in any way or shape or form going to see light of day, we would certainly oppose them because they are bills designed to eliminate your TAP fund. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pacheco, did you want to address those bills? Or the Senate Bill 1032?
Yeah, I believe those are both dead, but I'll double check that. Sorry.
Okay.
Our team's over at the Capitol, so I didn't have a friend to call.
That's fine.
Thanks.
No lifeline.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Those are all of the public comments that I have, so that brings us to agenda item 10B, summary of board direction.
Yep, I recorded one, and that is to bring back the amendments to the harassment, discrimination, retaliation policy back to a governance committee in September. I think Mr. Jacobs was planning on bringing back amendments in September anyway, so we'll schedule a meeting of the governance committee instead.
Terrific. I heard no other board direction as well. That brings us to agenda item number 10C, public comment. We do have 2 members of the public who wish to speak, Mr. Williams and Mr. Behrens. If you could please come up here and take a seat. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Please identify yourself. You can both come up. There are 2 seats over here with Mr. Williams. And please identify yourself and your affiliation for the record.
Who's going first?
So, Madam Chair, members of the board, I usually get up here to bark at you and or staff, so today I'm going to do something different. I recently got married, and so I was here yesterday with the help of David Tekritz, who set me up a schedule for changing my beneficiary, and I want to give you some feedback as a stakeholder on the quality of staff that work for CalPERS. From the gentleman who gave me directions, who was very courteous, to the 2 AGPAs, Rosa and Sanjik, and I apologize for probably mispronouncing the second one. I found the staff very helpful. They were very patient. They walked myself and my wife through the process, including changing power of attorney to a CalPERS power of attorney in the afternoon yesterday. And I don't think you all hear enough positive things about the CalPERS staff, because usually we're here to bark at you over some other issue. So I want to take this opportunity to thank those staff, thank CalPERS, and thank the board.
Well, thank you very much for those comments, Mr. Behrens, and congratulations on your nuptials.
I'm officially an old married man.
Lovely. Mr. Williams.
Good morning, Madam President and members of the board. I appreciate this opportunity to talk to you this morning. I was a firefighter in a contracting agency down in Southern California for 33 years. And I'm here today to ask this board, I know you can't do anything today, but at some point in time, if you can help me get legally retired. I've been drawing retirement from the CalPERS for a period of time since '02. And as a firefighter, I don't know if you guys are aware of it, but firefighters and public safety employees get a little special benefit because of the nature of their hazardous duty and stuff. And it's not just workers' compensation, but they get a plan. They call it 4850, full pay for 1 year. And with that comes a benefit of being able to draw that for either 1 year or until the member is deemed to be permanent and stationary. And the way it goes is if there is a dispute, it goes before the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board, and which there was a dispute on mine, and I was retired prior to being permanent and stationary and getting or getting the 1 year. And this is a decision that came from the Workers' Compensation Appeals Board. So this is called 21164 in regards to that issue. And so I do have a decision. I did follow all the rules and the laws, and everything was done. There's one problem, and I'm going to read this from the decision. This court has no jurisdiction to alter or modify applicant's retirement date. So they give the court the job of making the decision whether the person was retired prior to the end of benefits, but the court doesn't have the ability to step in and say, you've got to fix it. So CalPERS and the fire department that I worked for, the public agency, says, we can just ignore it. We're not going to do anything, and that's exactly what's gone on. I have never been legally retired because 21164 states that if a person was retired prior to the end of benefits, their retirement is not, let me think of the word, it's not effective. In other words, not retired. Even though I'm drawing the benefits, been paying me for, what, 15 years or something like that, I'm not retired. And I'd like for this board to, I've been trying to work through the staff. They keep acting like I've been legally retired, and I'm not getting any satisfaction or getting any restitution on the problem.
Thank you, Mr.
So I would really like to have some help.
We will, Ms. Frost, our CEO, is sitting down right next to you, and we'll have her and the team work with you on this.
I would very much appreciate it because I'd like to get this resolved. I mean, it's been going on a long time.
Long time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it?
Yes, that's it. Thank you very much, Mr. Williams.
We have someone coming up to meet with Mr. Williams.
Terrific. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Is there any other member of the public who wishes to speak at this time? Seeing none, we are adjourned. We will convene the closed session at 10:15.